Hey guys, tonight we slip back thousands of years to the green and gold heart of the Nile Valley, where the first light of dawn pushes away the stars and paints the sky with soft streaks of pink. You are no longer lying in your modern bed, you're stretched out on a woven reed mat inside a mud brick home. It's a cool night air still clinging to your skin. You are an ancient Egyptian farmer, one of the millions of ordinary people whose hands built a civilization as enduring as the pyramids. And just to set expectations, this isn't going to be a spa day. Between the blazing sun, the backbreaking work, and sandals with about the same cushioning as a paper napkin, you probably won't survive this. Still, it's worth the journey. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe button. Only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The rooster starts crowing long before you're ready. Its cry slices through the faint hush of the river, which you can just hear outside your house, a gentle lap of water against reeds. You roll over on your mat, which is both stiff and scratchy, and wonder, briefly, why no one in ancient Egypt invented a memory foam option. But there's no avoiding it. The day is waiting. Your wife is already awake. She's sorting flax fibers into neat bundles she spin later into thread for linen, her movements quick and practiced. She doesn't look at you directly, but her silence says, "Up you get." No excuses. Your children groan under thin linen sheets, pretending to still be asleep. You give one a nudge with your foot until they peek out with an exaggerated sigh. Welcome to ancient parenthood. The first step outside brings with it the smell of earth. Rich, dark soil, black as ink, in places spreads across the floodplain, still moist from the Nile's seasonal inundation. Without the river's flood, this land would be as barren as the desert dunes stretching just beyond. Historians still argue whether the annual flood was seen primarily as a scientific cycle or as a divine miracle gifted by the gods. In truth, to you, it's both. Science you can see, faith you can't live without. Overhead, the sky slowly brightens. A faint breeze shakes the palms on the far bank, and the silhouette of a heron glides past. Somewhere close by, an ibis stalks the reeds, the kind of bird sacred to Thoth, the god of writing and wisdom. It feels like a blessing, even if the bird is probably just looking for frogs. You duck back inside briefly for breakfast. Your wife has set out yesterday's bread dents, dark and full of barley husks. A side of onions adds sharpness, and if fortune smiles, there's a dab of honey to sweeten the mouthful. The meal wouldn't be complete without beer, but don't picture a frothy golden pint. This is thick, cloudy, tangy beer, more like a drinkable loaf of bread. Think of it as the Egyptian version of an energy smoothie, complete with floating chunks. Not glamorous, but it keeps you moving. You gulp a few swigs and almost choke on a grain husk. One of your children laughs, pointing, and you shoot them a look that says, "Don't forget, you'll be weeding in 5 minutes." Breakfast finished, you wrap a plain linen kilt around your waist. Light fabric is essential. You're about to spend hours under a sky hotter than a pizza oven. Your neighbors are beginning to stir too. Someone coughs from the yard next door, and a sleepy good morning drifts over the mud brick wall. You grunt back in agreement. Both of you resigned to another long day. Your first real task. The animals? You shuffle to the pen where the family goat immediately bleats like it hasn't eaten in weeks, even though you fed it yesterday. Chickens scuttle around your feet, pecking at the dirt. Each egg feels like treasure, fragile and rare. You toss scraps and check the water, mentally calculating how many more days until you can risk butchering one of the birds without upsetting the balance of food and egg supply. Farming is nothing if not a spreadsheet written in sweat. Next come the irrigation channels. Small ditches carved by hand crisscross the edge of your field, carrying Nile water where it's needed most. You crouch, dig fingers into the damp soil, and adjust a little reed gate to let more water flow. It's messy work, and your knees sink into the mud. But without this careful guidance, your barley wouldn't grow. Some say early farmers used crocodile dung as sunscreen, spreading it across their arms and legs like a gritty lotion. You glance toward the river and decide whether that's fact or folklore, not about to test it. By now, the kids have dragged themselves outside, blinking at the growing light. You point toward the weed patch at the far edge of the yard. They groan in chorus, but shuffle off, already flicking handfuls of dirt at each other when they think you're not looking. You let them have their moment. Keeping children motivated to pull weeds is hard enough without constant lectures. The sun is rising faster now, its rays gilding the water. Heat presses in, like the sky itself is leaning on your shoulders. You collect the wooden plow, smooth at the handle from years of use, and lead the ox into the field. The animal snorts, stamping at the ground, eager to move. You click your tongue, and together you take those first trudging steps into the soil. The smell of earth fills your nose as the blade slices the ground into furrows. Every pass of the plow is both exhausting and satisfying, laying the groundwork for future harvests. Barley, wheat, maybe even emerald will depend on what you do today. Each furrow feels like a gamble. Will the floods be generous enough? Will pests stay away? Will the gods keep their side of the bargain? Historians debate whether farmers like you owned your land outright or leased it from wealthier estate holders tied to temples or nobles. For you, the answer doesn't matter much. Whether land is yours or not, it's your back that breaks, your sweat that waters the soil, and your family that eats or starves depending on what grows here. You glance up briefly and spot a neighbor already in his field, his ox plodding in rhythm. He waves with one hand, the other still gripping his plow. The two of you share a moment of solidarity. Different furrows, same struggle. Hours stretch ahead, but as your ox lumbers on and the soil turns under your blade, you settle into the rhythm. Dust clings to your ankles. Sweat stings your eyes. A dragonfly zips past, shimmering in the morning sun. Your children's laughter drifts faintly from the weed patch, mingling with the grunt of animals and the rustle of grain in the breeze. This is life, simple and unyielding. No pyramids rise here. No gold glitters, just the endless push and pull of survival, written in furrows and bread loaves. And though you may never carve your name in stone, every seed dropped in this field writes a quiet story of endurance. And so, as the Nile glimmers beside you and the ox strains forward once more, your day as an ancient Egyptian farmer truly begins. The ox trudges along in front of you, hooves sinking into damp furrows. And by the time the sun clears the horizon fully, you already feel sweat trickling down your back. Morning has only just begun, yet your day is layered with tasks waiting in line like impatient customers at the market. That's the life of an ancient Egyptian farmer. No gap between waking up and working. No soft buffer of emails or coffee. The Nile sets the rhythm, and you follow it. You glance toward the village. Smoke rises faintly from clay ovens, carrying the smell of baking bread. Neighbors call to each other across fields, voices floating over the water channels. It's strangely musical, this early hour, a chorus of farmers, oxen, and birdsong. Before the sun climbs too high, you decide it's time to pause the plowing and tend to the smaller morning chores. The ox is grateful. It flicks its tail as if to say, finally, a break. You loop the rope around a wooden post and let the beast rest, munching lazily on a handful of straw. Inside your yard, your wife has gathered the flax she was combing earlier. She sits cross-legged, twisting fibers into thread with a hand spindle. Her motions are fluid, the spindle whirling like a dancer between her fingers. This thread will become linen cloth for clothing, bandages, even sail fabric if enough is woven. It's tedious, repetitive work, but it's also survival. Without cloth, your family would be ragged and exposed to the punishing sun. Meanwhile, the children are busy, or at least, that's what you hope. One perches on a fence post, waving arms dramatically to scare away sparrows eyeing the barley. The other drags a stick through the dirt, pretending to be a mighty pharaoh commanding armies. You suppress a smile. Bird scaring may not feel heroic, but without it, those flocks would strip your fields bare in an afternoon. Historians still argue whether children were always pressed into such roles, or if it depended on the household size and wealth. But one thing is clear. In your house, everyone pitches in. Breakfast round 2 arrives because the first hunk of bread didn't quite carry you far enough. Your wife hands you a smaller loaf, warm from the oven, its crust blackened in spots from the uneven fire. You tear into it, wash it down with another swig of thick beer, and feel strength creep back into your muscles. Even onions make a second appearance, their pungent bite cutting through the heaviness of bread. Egyptians loved onions so much that they buried them with their dead, believing the concentric rings symbolized eternal life. You're not thinking about eternity, though, just how to keep the kids from pocketing your last bite. With food in your belly, you make the rounds. Chickens need checking again. One has escaped the pen and struts around like it owns the place. You grab it gently, ignoring its furious flapping, and tuck it back behind the reed fence. Goats bleat for more feed, and you sigh. They're like toddlers, never satisfied. A neighbor approaches carrying a clay jar. He greets you with a grin, offering a taste of yesterday's fresh beer in exchange for a basket of onions. Barter is the lifeblood of your community. There's no currency jingling in your pocket, no coins to flip, just goods swapped, favors remembered, and debts balanced at the market. You agree, and soon both of you are chuckling over the uneven trade, though you suspect his beer is weaker than he admits. By now, the sun is climbing, warming the mud brick walls until they radiate heat. You adjust your linen kilt, already damp with sweat. There's no escape from the heat wraps around you like an extra layer of clothing. You envy the crocodiles lounging in the shallows, their mouths open in lazy grins. Scholars still debate whether crocodiles were truly respected as divine creatures or mostly feared nuisances. But to you, they're both. They remind you that the Nile giveth and the Nile taketh away. Back in the field, you return to the plow. The ox heaves forward again, and furrows stretch in tidy lines across the soil. Each line is both muscle and prayer, as though carving the ground could guarantee prosperity. Your shoulders ache, but rhythm dulls the pain. Push, guide, breathe, repeat. Somewhere in the distance, a group of farmers sings to keep time with their hoes striking the earth. The melody floats across the air, simple but powerful. Music isn't just entertainment, here it's a tool to make endless labor bearable. Halfway through, you pause to drink from a water jar cooled by evaporation in its porous clay walls. The liquid tastes faintly of earth, but is blessedly cool. Your child darts up, wiping sweat from their brow, and asks if you've seen the ibis again. You shake your head. They look disappointed, then scamper off to resume bird-scaring duty. Small joys like spotting a sacred animal can brighten an otherwise endless day. And then there's the unexpected comedy. Your ox sneezes explosively, startling itself so badly it jerks sideways and nearly drags the plow into the canal. You wrestle it back into place, muttering under your breath. Somewhere behind you, your wife laughs openly at the scene. You wave a muddy hand in mock annoyance, but secretly, you're laughing too. Ancient farm life has no shortage of slapstick moments as the morning stretches toward noon. The chores weave into one another, guiding water through channels, checking seedlings for pests, repairing the plow when its wooden shaft splinters slightly. Nothing glamorous, nothing monumental, yet everything vital. Each action stacks atop the last until survival is built not from one grand effort, but from countless small ones. By the time the sun stands high above, your body aches in every muscle. But you've sown seeds, watered furrows, and kept animals fed. The ox huffs beside you, equally spent, its hide streaked with mud. Your wife coils flax thread into neat balls, setting them aside for weaving. The children collapse in the shade of the fence, hair full of dust, proud of their weed piles. It's barely midday, but already the morning's rhythm has left its mark on the land, on your family, and on you. Life here is unrelenting, but in its own way, strangely steady. And as you wipe sweat from your brow, you remind yourself, without mornings like this, there would be no bread, no beer, no festivals, no Egypt at all. The midday sun is no gentle companion. It glares down like a blazing overseer, painting every surface in sharp light and shadows. The Nile gleams like a molten ribbon, its surface too bright to stare at for long. By now, your kilt clings to your skin, and sweat trickles freely into your eyes. But there's no pause, no luxury of retreating indoors. The fields call, and you must answer. Your ox snorts as if it, too, would prefer a nap under a palm tree. You tug its rope, coaxing it back into line. The plow digs again, tearing open furrows in the heavy soil. Each pass feels like pulling against the sun itself. Still, you keep moving. The rhythm is all that matters. Lean, pull, breathe. Your shoulders ache, your palms burn where the wooden handle rubs, but the earth softens under your effort. To keep yourself distracted, you hum a tune. It's an old field song passed from farmer to farmer, a melody that drifts across the ages. Soon your neighbor picks it up, and together your voices mingle in the air. Singing is more than just comfort. It sets the pace of the work, uniting hands and hearts against fatigue. Historians still argue whether the famous hymns written on papyrus were ever sung in fields. But you suspect most songs never reached parchment at all. They lived only in throats and memories. The tune lifts your spirit for a while, even as sweat streaks down your face. The children, meanwhile, are not idle. One waves a sling, sending pebbles whizzing near flocks of birds eyeing the seedlings. Another crouches by the irrigation ditch, fishing out clumps of reeds that threaten to block the flow. They grumble, of course, but deep down they know their small actions are threads in the same survival net. Your youngest decides to chase a goat that's nibbling near the boundary wall. And within seconds, half the field echoes with laughter as the goat easily outruns him, its little hooves clattering like mischievous drums. Every so often, you pause to check the soil. Your calloused fingers press into the damp earth, testing its give. It's rich now, but you know it won't last forever. The Nile's annual flood refreshes the land with silt, yet sometimes the water runs too high and drowns crops, or too low and leaves them starving. You whisper a quick prayer under your breath, not caring which God hears it, only that someone up there listens. Farmers are practical, but even practicality bends under the sky. As the ox trudges on, you think of the tools at your disposal. Your plow is nothing more than a wooden frame tipped with a bronze blade, primitive by modern standards, yet revolutionary in its own time. Without it, you'd be hunched over with a hoe all day, breaking your back twice as fast. The sickle, too, waits for harvest months away, its flint teeth sharp enough to slice through stalks. These tools are humble, but they are the difference between survival and hunger. Of course, they also break easily. You keep spare flint blades tucked away at home because nothing ruins momentum like snapping your best sickle on a stubborn reed. The breeze stirs the reeds by the river, offering brief relief. You pause, water jar in hand, and drink deeply. The clay vessel cools the liquid by evaporation, a trick your ancestors mastered long ago. It isn't icy, but in this heat, it might as well be the nectar of the gods. The jar passes to your children, who gulp noisily, spilling half of it down their fronts. You roll your eyes. Hydration, yes, but style. 0 points. Then, of course, comes the comic relief. A frog leaps from the canal and lands squarely on your foot. You yelp, nearly dropping the jar, while your children laugh so hard they fall into the dirt. The frog, unconcerned, hops away. You shake your head, muttering about how even the smallest creatures seem determined to mock you. Ancient farming, it seems, comes with built-in slapstick. Time drags. The sun crawls across the sky, and every furrow feels longer than the last. You squint at the horizon, where temple pylons rise faintly in the distance, painted with stories of gods and pharaohs. Those monumental walls might last for centuries, but you know they depend on your daily toil. Without grain, priests wouldn't feast, workers wouldn't be fed, and pyramids wouldn't rise. In your own quiet way, you're holding up the whole kingdom, even if no scribe ever writes your name. The thought carries you forward until your ox refuses another step. It stops dead, sides heaving, tongue lolling. You pat its flank, letting it rest. You know better than to push it past its limit. An exhausted ox means no more plowing, and no more plowing means no food. Animals are stubborn coworkers, but they're also lifelines. Sometimes you swear the ox understands you, especially when it deliberately angles toward the shady patch by the date palms. Coincidence? You doubt it? While the ox rests, you sit under the shade of a date palm and pull out a handful of figs. Their sweetness cuts the dryness in your mouth, and for a moment you feel almost indulgent. Figs and dates are your candy, sticky and rich, a treat earned by sweat. You think of the more extravagant feasts whispered about in town duck stews, honey cakes, but laugh at the thought. For you, 2 figs in the shade might as well be a royal banquet. Your neighbor joins you, wiping grime from his brow. He tells you about a strange dream he had last night. A crocodile walking upright through the village, demanding baskets of barley in exchange for protection. You chuckle, teasing him about drinking too much beer before bed. Yet secretly, you wonder if it might be an omen. Dreams matter here. They're doorways through which the gods whisper. Scholars still debate whether dreams were interpreted by trained priests or by each household's elders. But in your village, everyone becomes an expert the moment they wake up. The ox grunts, ready again, and you rise. Afternoon looms, and with it, more plowing. Your muscles ache, but you push on, row by row. Each furrow is a promise, and each seed you'll scatter later is a gamble on the Nile's mercy. The land is demanding, but it's also generous if treated with respect. You remind yourself that this rhythm, backbreaking though it feels, is what ties your family to the land as tightly as rope binds papyrus stalks. Around mid-afternoon, a scribe passes on the path. Stylus tucked behind his ear, papyrus roll under one arm. He pauses, shading his eyes, and casually asks about your field's progress. You give him a polite nod, hiding the flicker of annoyance. Scribes rarely sweat like this, yet their records can decide how much tax you owe. One misplaced stroke of ink, and suddenly your household owes more grain than you ever harvested. Still, you smile, never a bad idea when someone's reed pen can cost you half your dinner. The sun softens, finally sliding westward, though its heat lingers like hot coals. Shadows stretch long across the field, and you straighten, surveying your work. Rows of fresh furrows stretch behind you, a patchwork of human effort against the vastness of nature. It's exhausting, yes, but also strangely satisfying. You find yourself proud, even if tomorrow you'll ache in places you didn't know existed. Evening is still far, but the worst of the midday glare has passed. The breeze grows cooler, carrying scents of mud, water plants, and the faint tank of dung fuel burning in some nearby hearth. The Nile murmurs steadily beside you, a constant reminder that its generosity is borrowed, not promised. 1 year of poor floods, and all this sweat becomes meaningless. And yet, here you are, row after row, stubborn enough to try again. The day isn't over, not by a long shot. More chores, more laughter, more quiet prayers wait ahead. But for now, as the ox tugs gently at the rope and the children scamper at your side, you carry the satisfaction of a morning well spent under the unforgiving Egyptian sun. By mid-afternoon, the relentless sun has turned the field into a furnace, baking the soil and darkening the reeds along the Nile. Your back aches from the morning's labor, yet there is no time for idleness. The work of a farmer doesn't pause, even when every muscle in your body whispers that it should. The tools you carry, simple as they are, become extensions of yourself, almost like loyal companions that help you wrest life from the stubborn earth. You lift the wooden plow again, its bronze-tipped blade glinting faintly in the harsh sunlight. Despite its age, it holds up well, though you constantly worry about splinters or broken joints. Farmers have long tales of mid-field tool failures, and while some are exaggerated, you know enough to always keep spare parts nearby. Your ox huffs in sympathy, stamping the earth as if it understands the intensity of the day. You tighten your grip on the plow, guiding the animal in rhythmic steps. Sweat pours freely now, soaking the linen of your kilt and dripping from your temples. The sun burns your shoulders, and the smell of warm mud and river silt fills your nostrils. You pause briefly to flick a bead of sweat from your forehead, catching a glimpse of the horizon. The fields stretch endlessly, the green of young barley contrasting with the dark, freshly turned soil. Each furrow represents hours of labor, yet the promise of harvest future bread, beer, and survival drives you onward. Tools are central to this life, and not just for efficiency. Your plow, while basic, represents human ingenuity. Crafted from local timber with a bronze tip sharpened on stone, it slices through the heavy soil better than a simple hoe ever could. The sickle, with its curved flint blade, waits nearby for the eventual harvest, gleaming in anticipation. Even smaller implements, like wooden dibblers used to plant seeds or red rakes for leveling soil, have their place in the rhythm of your day. Scholars still debate whether such tools were universally standard or if local farmers adapted them uniquely to their lands. But your experience tells you that small innovations make monumental differences. Meanwhile, the children continue their tasks, though their attention is a mix of work and play. One waves a sling at a cautious flock of birds, trying not to let them steal the tender seedlings. Another crouches by a narrow irrigation channel, carefully removing reeds and debris that could block the flow of water. You watch them, pride mingling with exasperation. They are learning skills that will carry them into adulthood, but they are also inventing games and stories along the way. The line between work and play is blurred, but in this household, both are essential. You pause to inspect the irrigation channels yourself. The careful guidance of Nile water is as vital as the plowing itself. Small reed gates divert water to newly planted furrows, and slight miscalculations can mean either drought or waterlogged crops. Adjusting a gate takes concentration, patience, and a bit of brute force, especially when mud clings stubbornly to your fingers. You remember tales from older farmers about how their ancestors used canals and basins with clever precision. Some even claiming that crocodile dung served as part of a rudimentary waterproofing method. While it sounds dubious, the idea lingers in your mind as a quirky reminder of the lengths people have gone to tame nature. The sun climbs higher, yet brief gusts of wind carry relief, rustling the reeds and scattering dust motes in golden light. You take a quick sip of cool water from your clay jar, its porous surface keeping the liquid pleasantly chilled. Nearby, the children dash under the shade of a palm to gulp from their own vessels, spilling half of it in the process. You shake your head, silently chuckling at their clumsiness. Even in this relentless labor, there are moments of humor that lighten the burden. As you return to plowing, your mind drifts to the village and its market. The thought of trading barley for fresh onions, figs, or a small jug of beer adds a rhythm to your labor, a reward at the end of the day. You imagine the bustling paths lined with mud brick stalls, neighbors haggling with playful barbs, and children chasing each other between baskets of goods. Even the smallest interactions sharing news of a flood. Teasing a neighbor about their goat form, the social fabric that binds your community together. Historians still argue about the exact structure and regulations of these village markets, but everyone agrees that barter, gossip, and small favors were essential to survival. By late afternoon, fatigue sets in. Your hands are raw where the plow handle rubs against your palms, and your back protests every bending movement. Yet, stubbornness or perhaps necessity keeps you going. You pause to survey the furrows already made, the young plants standing in hopeful rows. Each line is a testament to patience, effort, and a delicate understanding of the land's moods. The Nile has already receded, leaving fertile silt, and your careful irrigation ensures that nothing goes to waste. Animals, too, are part of this ecosystem. The ox, though tired, continues to step reliably, understanding the rhythm of the day. Chickens strut nearby, scratching at scattered seeds, while goats nibble cautiously at the edges of the field. Managing these creatures is as much art as labor. They require food, water, and constant vigilance against predators. Yet they provide sustenance, manure for fertilizing, and companionship. Occasionally, a bird swoops down too close to a seedling, and you wave it off with a stick, while one of your children giggles at the display. The mundane becomes entertaining under the weight of heat and exertion. Even small moments, like seeing a heron glide across the water or the way sunlight turns mud into bronze, offer brief respites for the senses. By the time the shadows stretch longer across the Nile, the bulk of your plowing is complete. You wipe sweat from your brow, knowing that the work of survival is never finished. There are repairs to be made to tools, irrigation to monitor, and a day's worth of seeds yet to plant. Still, there is satisfaction in the visible results of your labor, the neat furrows, the steady flow of water, the rhythm established with the ox and the children. As evening approaches, the wind picks up slightly, cooling the field and carrying the distant scent of cooking bread from neighboring homes. Your wife's voice calls across the yard, signaling that she has finished spinning flax for now and is ready to prepare the evening meal. It's a reminder that even in a day dominated by labor, moments of domesticity punctuate the work. Despite exhaustion, there is an unmistakable sense of purpose. Each action, the plow slicing soil, the careful gait adjustment, the children's protective vigilance contributes to a delicate balance that sustains life. Without these efforts, the village could not thrive. Without the tools, the animals, or the community, the Nile's bounty would be meaningless. And in this balance, small triumphs emerge. A well-watered furrow, a seed planted straight, a child laughing despite the heat. The sun sinks lower, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold. You pause one final time, surveying the field. The work is far from done, yet there is pride in what has been accomplished. You glance at your ox, panting and coated in sweat, and offer a gentle pat. Even as the day's labor leaves your muscles screaming, you recognize that survival here depends on rhythm, endurance, and the quiet ingenuity of human hands. As night approaches, cool breeze carries the scent of the river and the distant sounds of village life. A dog barking, laughter from a neighbor's yard, the faint strum of a simple reed flute. You feel the day's weariness, but also the comforting pulse of life in the Nile Valley. Tomorrow will demand the same energy, the same persistence, and perhaps even more ingenuity. Yet for now, under the deepening hues of sunset, you allow yourself a moment of reflection. This labor, these tools, this sun-baked earth, they are the backbone of existence, and in their simplicity lies a profound and enduring dignity. Evening in the Nile Valley is a strange sort of relief. The sun has dipped behind distant dunes, and the air cools enough that sweat begins to dry into a crust along your skin. The smell of wet mud mingles with the faint aroma of cooking bread, roasting fish, and smoke curling from clay ovens. You pause at the edge of your field, letting the ox graze on the last bits of greenery while your children gather around small piles of sticks and reeds, laughing at a joke one of them made about a stubborn goat. The chaos of the day softens into a gentle rhythm. You return to your home, where mud brick walls hold in the lingering warmth of the sun. Inside, your wife is finishing up her chores, spinning flax into thread with practiced ease, her hands moving in circular patterns that you recognize from countless evenings past. This thread will eventually become linen for clothing, sails, or even funerary wrappings. The work is monotonous, yet there's a quiet satisfaction in it, a tangible sense of productivity. Fringe stories suggest some farmers dyed linen using crushed beetles or plant extracts, giving clothes deep reds and soft yellows. You aren't about to try it tonight, but you admire the ingenuity. After stowing tools and feeding the animals, you wash up in a small basin, the cool water a balm to aching muscles. Your hands are cracked and rough, and the smell of mud clings stubbornly to your skin. Even so, the act of cleaning feels ceremonial, a tiny reclaiming of dignity after a day spent bowing to the sun and soil. Scholars still argue whether washing routines were strictly ritualistic or purely practical, but to you, they serve both purposes. A blend of hygiene, comfort, and quiet devotion. Children squabble over who gets the last sip from a shared water jar. And you interject with mock sternness, earning laughter instead of obedience. They are learning responsibility in the most chaotic of ways, and you watch with a mixture of amusement and pride. Each small victory, watering a plant correctly, keeping a chick from wandering into the reeds, is a lesson in survival. Your wife calls out that dinner is ready. The meal is simple: flatbread onions, a small portion of fish caught from the Nile, and a thick porridge made from barley. It's hardly a feast, but it sustains the energy that will carry everyone into another day of toil. Sitting together, you break bread with hands sticky from flour, trading stories and small jokes. Perhaps the neighbor with the upright crocodile dream will visit tomorrow. And the children might recount their skirmishes with the local goats. Humor remains the constant companion of labor, a thread weaving through sweat and sunburn. Night falls fully, and the village quiets, except for the occasional bray of a donkey or the clucking of a hen. You sit outside for a while, letting the cool breeze wash over your shoulders. Stars pierce the dark sky, scattered in patterns that seem eternal. Somewhere in the distance, a temple lamp flickers, casting a soft glow. The contrast between the permanence of stone and the fleeting labor of the day is striking. Pyramids will endure for centuries, but the plowed field must be tended again tomorrow. Yet both are products of human endeavor, different scales of effort directed by the same hands. As you stretch your muscles and let your eyes drift to the horizon, your mind wanders to the unseen world around you. The river teeming with fish, the hidden dens of snakes and small predators, the insects that might devastate a crop if not managed. Survival depends on vigilance and understanding, and even as your body rests, your mind catalogs potential risks, planning interventions for the coming days. There is strategy in farming, a mental exercise that balances instinct, experience, and the unpredictability of nature. Sleep approaches gradually. Children curl against one another under thin linen sheets, exhausted from chasing, weeding, and wrestling with stubborn animals. Your wife continues to twist flax into thread, the motion hypnotic in the flickering light of a small oil lamp. You feel the pull of fatigue, yet linger for a moment, savoring the end of a day where each task, no matter how menial, has contributed to your family's survival. Historians still debate the role of extended family in daily life. Did elders supervise, or were households largely autonomous? In your experience, neighbors help one another without much prompting. A shared bucket of water, a lending of tools, a friendly word across the field. The social web is as essential to survival as the crops themselves, intertwining lives in ways both visible and subtle. Tonight, that web feels comforting. A final round of chores takes you back outside. Chickens are secured in pens, goats are fed, and the ox settles near the barn, chewing contentedly. You check the water one last time, noting the rise and fall of the Nile with careful eyes. Nature operates on its schedule, not yours. But your diligence ensures that your family navigates the river's whims safely. The night is calm, save for the occasional croak of a frog or the rustle of reeds. You sit for a moment under the stars, imagining the countless generations of farmers who have done exactly what you did today. Their hands, their sweat, their routines have carved civilization from the Nile's banks. You feel connected, a small link in a long, unbroken chain. It is exhausting, yes, but profoundly grounding. Finally, you settle onto your mat. The day's labor leaves your muscles sore, yet your mind is at peace. Tomorrow will demand the same devotion, the same ingenuity, the same stubborn endurance. Yet tonight, you close your eyes with a quiet satisfaction, aware that your sweat and toil will nourish your family and maintain the delicate rhythm of village life. Even the smallest tasks, a well-tended furrow, a secured chicken, a twirling spindle have contributed to something enduring. Survival, continuity, and the subtle triumph of human perseverance. Morning comes again, soft and golden, though no less demanding than the day before. You wake to the distant call of a heron along the riverbank, its long neck bending gracefully as it searches for breakfast. The ox shifts nearby, stretching its legs before the day's labor begins. You rise, muscles stiff but accustomed to the strain, and take in the familiar sights and sounds. Reeds swaying in the breeze, children chasing each other through the yard, and neighbors already at work in their fields. The Nile reflects the sunlight in sparkling ripples, its waters both life-giving and capricious. A mismanaged irrigation channel or a poorly timed flood can undo weeks of toil, yet without it, survival is impossible. Your morning routine is precise. You check the ox first, brushing mud and dew from its coat, inspecting its hooves and murmuring encouragements. The beast responds with a grunt, seemingly aware that its cooperation is essential for the day's plowing. Tools come next. The plow, sharpened bronze tip glinting in the early light, and the small hand sickle for weeding along the edges. You take a moment to straighten ropes and check wooden handles for splinters, a precaution that saves hours of frustration. The ox seems to sense your attentiveness, nudging against your shoulder as if approving the inspection. Breakfast is a modest affair, yet no less satisfying. Flatbread warmed over hot coals, a few fresh onions, and a cup of weak beer. You tear the bread, savoring its warmth and the slight crunch of its crust. Your children sit cross-legged, nibbling their portions while exchanging exaggerated stories of yesterday's adventures, unescaped chicken, a mischievous goat, a frog that had leaped onto your foot. Humor, small and necessary, eases the heaviness of labor. You remember reading somewhere that Egyptians believed onions symbolized eternity. You smile at the thought that perhaps these small bulbs are quietly teaching resilience, one layer at a time. Historians still argue whether onion offerings were primarily symbolic or also practical. But in your morning, they are both. Once fed, you lead the ox to the field. The morning air is cooler, a temporary reprieve from the relentless sun to come. You guide the plow along the carefully measured rows, each furrow a testament to both endurance and precision. Small deviations in alignment can reduce yields or cause water to pool unevenly, and experience guides your hands. You hum a tune, the rhythm syncing with the ox's steps and the swing of your arms. Nearby, a neighbor joins in, singing a slightly different melody. And soon the field echoes with a patchwork chorus of voices of small human symphony accompanying the labor of survival. Children follow, alternating between small chores and games. One carries water to newly planted seedlings, taking care not to spill it along the furrows, while another retrieves fallen tools, mimicking your motions with exaggerated seriousness. Laughter and chatter fill the gaps between the sound of the plow cutting through soil and the ox's hooves. You occasionally pause to offer guidance or correct a technique, aware that these small lessons, how to plant, how to protect crops, how to manage animals, will shape the next generation of farmers. Irrigation demands careful attention. Water from the Nile is precious and unpredictable. You adjust small channels, redirecting flow where needed, checking that sluices are clear of debris. The system is delicate. Too much water and roots drown. Too little and seedlings wither. Fringe accounts tell of farmers using baked clay tokens to measure water distribution, a rudimentary but ingenious method to maintain consistency across fields. You haven't tried that yet, but the idea intrigues you. By late morning, the sun rises higher, bringing with it the familiar heat. Sweat beads on your forehead, and the smell of warm mud and silt fills your nostrils. The ox slows, prompting you to pause and rest. You drink from a clay jar, the water cool and faintly mineral, rich. Children dash under the shade of nearby palms, whispering stories about sacred animals rumored to roam the riverbanks, ibises, crocodiles, even jackals. Tales blend with reality here, and the line between caution and superstition is thin. Your neighbor approaches, offering a portion of barley in exchange for a handful of figs. Barter is the currency of life, more reliable than coins, which are scarce or non-existent in your household. You hand over the figs, earning a grin and a playful tease about yesterday's frog incident. Life is as much about these small exchanges and interactions as it is about bending soil to your will. Social bonds are vital, not just for trade, but for shared knowledge, mutual aid, and occasional laughter in the midst of toil. Around midday, the ox tires again. You pause beneath the sparse shade of a palm, stretching your arms and back. Your children sit beside you, munching scraps of bread and recounting adventures with dramatic flair. The simplest occurrences: a bird swooping too close, a goat refusing to be herded. A lost tool becomes stories, small dramas that punctuate the rhythm of labor. Humor and narrative serve as salves for the body and mind, keeping morale high in a life measured by effort and endurance. You glance at the horizon and note the temple pylons rising faintly. A reminder that monumental architecture is built on the backs of ordinary laborers like yourself. Pyramids and walls endure for centuries, yet their creation depends on everyday toil, tending of fields, and the careful management of resources. Even the smallest act, guiding a seedling, adjusting a water gate, mending a tool, contributes to the continuity of a civilization that will outlast individual lives. After a brief rest, you resume plowing, pushing through the midday heat. Sweat streams freely, dripping into your eyes and mixing with dust from the soil. The rhythm of work, plow, step, guide becomes meditative, a trance-like repetition that anchors your mind while your body strains. Occasional diversions: frog hopping across your foot, a child's exaggerated slip, or a bird that swoops too close offer comic relief and prevent monotony from overwhelming your senses. By afternoon, the labor begins to meld with reflection. You consider the intricacies of the irrigation channels, the yield potential of each row, the health of animals, and the state of nearby plots. Each decision where to place water, how deep to plow, which weeds to remove is critical. A single misstep could reduce the harvest significantly, affecting not just your household, but your village. Farmers must think tactically and strategically, balancing immediate effort with long-term survival. As the sun arcs toward its zenith, the ox slows, muscles taut from repeated exertion. You give it a gentle pat, offering water and small encouragements. Children help where they can, learning through observation and action. You marvel at their adaptability, at the way even small hands contribute to the collective effort. The day, like the Nile, flows in continuous cycles: labor, rest, nourishment, and return to work. By late afternoon, the bulk of the fieldwork is complete. Furrows stretch in neat lines, seedlings glimmer faintly green against the dark, fertile soil, and irrigation channels carry water with precise flow. You take stock of the day's work, feeling both exhaustion and pride. This is survival, yes, but it is also mastery, the quiet triumph of human persistence against environmental uncertainty. Evening approaches. The wind cools, carrying scents of cooking and the distant laughter of neighbors. Chickens are corralled, goats are fed, and the ox finally rests fully, panting and satisfied. You pause beneath a palm, surveying the scene, the ordered chaos of village life. The gentle ripple of the Nile, the horizon streaked with the soft colors of sunset. Despite fatigue, a sense of accomplishment rises in you. Each furrow, each careful irrigation, each small act of tending contributes to something larger than yourself: the rhythm of survival, continuity, and life along the Nile. The following morning dawns soft and pink, yet no less demanding than those before. You wake to the gentle croak of frogs from the nearby canal, accompanied by the rustling of reeds and the distant clatter of goats being herded along narrow paths. Your ox stretches and shakes dew from its coat, shaking loose the remnants of yesterday's dust and sweat. You rise, muscles sore yet accustomed to the strain, and step into the early light. The air carries a chill now, the brief reprieve before the sun begins its relentless climb. Already, neighbors are moving along their own fields, guiding oxen, checking irrigation, and whispering among themselves about the state of crops. Survival, you know, requires more than strength, demands vigilance and timing. Breakfast is modest. Flatbread warmed over hot coals, a smear of date syrup, and a small portion of beer. The children chatter excitedly, recounting dreams or stories from the previous day, their voices blending with the sounds of the river and the distant temple bells. Humor remains a constant companion, softening the hard edges of labor. Even a misplaced frog or a stubborn goat can be transformed into an elaborate tale, retold with laughter that echoes across the mud-brick walls of the village. Scholars still debate how humor and storytelling shaped social cohesion in early Egyptian communities. But your household provides living evidence. Laughter lubricates the gears of survival as effectively as water nourishes the soil. Once fed, you lead the ox toward the fields. The soil is cool from the night, rich with silt deposited by the last flood, promising fertility if handled correctly. You take a moment to inspect your tools. The plow's bronze tip gleams faintly, the wooden handle polished by repeated use, and the hand sickle hangs within reach for weeding along the edges. Small adjustments ensure efficiency. A loose strap or a slight chip could cost hours of extra work. You run your fingers over the worn wood, aware of the generations of hands that have shaped these same tools. Ancient farmers' fringed tales suggest sometimes tied broken plow parts together, with strips of papyrus in moments of necessity. A makeshift ingenuity born of desperation. The ox lumbers into the furrows, guided by your steady hand and quiet commands. The rhythmic sound of hooves and bronze against soil forms a soothing cadence. You hum a field song, and soon your neighbor joins in, their voice rising above the hum of insects and the distant caw of birds. The chorus of farmer songs is more than entertainment. It synchronizes labor, reduces fatigue, and creates a shared rhythm that keeps everyone moving efficiently. Historians still argue whether such songs were formalized or largely improvised, but in practice, they serve as practical and psychological tools for the day's work. Children, of course, are never far from mischief. One fetches water for the young seedlings, spilling some along the furrows, while another tries to herd the chickens away from freshly planted rows. Their laughter mingles with the sounds of plowing, a counterpoint to the serious work of survival. You pause occasionally to correct their techniques, balancing instruction with patience. Even small hands can contribute meaningfully to the household's efforts, and today's lessons will carry into adulthood. Irrigation demands constant attention. You check the small channels, shifting gates to regulate water flow and ensure that every seedling receives the right amount. Too much water drowns roots, while too little leaves them parched. A breeze carries the fragrance of wet mud, algae, and distant reeds, a sensory reminder of the river's presence. Fringe stories hint at farmers placing sacred symbols or small offerings near irrigation points to appease water spirits, blending practical water management with spiritual caution. You may not do so yourself, but you cannot deny the calming effect of ritual on tense days. By late morning, the sun intensifies. Sweat drips freely, running into your eyes and streaking your skin with mud. The ox slows, prompting a short pause beneath a palm tree. You drink from your clay jar, cool water flowing through parched lips. Children dash into the shade, exchanging exaggerated tales of yesterday's exploits. Frogs, goats, and occasionally a bird that dared to snatch a seed. Each story is a mixture of reality and imagination, a creative coping mechanism against the monotony and heat of labor. You glance toward the horizon, noting the temple pylons rising in faint relief against the sky. The monuments, solid and enduring, contrast sharply with the ephemeral nature of plowed fields. Yet both are products of human endeavor. Pyramids and walls rely on laborers like you for sustenance, tools, and time. Even the smallest act of guiding a seedling or repairing a water gate contributes to the larger rhythm of civilization. A reminder of the interdependence between monumental structures and everyday toil. After a brief rest, you resume work, each furrow slicing through soil rich with promise. The rhythm of labor plow, step, guide becomes almost meditative. Occasionally, a bird swoops too close, or a child trips dramatically, offering comic relief and breaking the trance. Humor, persistence, and attentiveness intertwine, forming the unseen scaffolding of survival. By midday, the sun is at its peak. Sweat runs freely, mixing with dust, mud, and silt. The ox grows weary, and you pause once again, patting its flanks and murmuring encouragements. Children rest briefly, eating scraps of bread or sipping water, their small faces flushed with exertion. The day is exhausting, yet a sense of accomplishment grows with each row completed. Afternoon stretches on. You check irrigation channels, monitor the seedlings, and adjust tools as necessary. Social interactions continue. Neighbors exchange brief greetings, offer advice, or trade small goods. Barter remains a key aspect of daily life. A handful of figs might earn a portion of barley or a fresh fish. Even minor interactions reinforce bonds, strengthen the village's social network, and ensure that help is available in times of need. Scholars debate the formal structure of these exchanges, but in practice, they are fluid, adaptive, and essential for communal survival. As shadows lengthen, the bulk of the day's fieldwork concludes. You survey your progress. Neat furrows, healthy seedlings, and flowing irrigation channels. The ox rests fully, chewing contentedly, while the children wander among the rows, checking on their contributions. Evening draws near, and with it, the familiar sense of cooking fires, distant laughter, and the river's steady murmur. Night brings calm. The village quiets. Animals settle, and a gentle breeze carries the faint aroma of baked bread and roasted fish. You take a moment to reflect on the day. The sweat, the laughter, the small triumphs, and the lessons learned. Each furrow, each water adjustment, each shared story contributes to survival, continuity, and a deeper connection to the land. Tomorrow will demand the same devotion, ingenuity, and endurance. But tonight, you rest under the open sky, aware that your efforts have sustained life and nurtured the bonds of community. The next morning arrives with soft golden light spilling across the Nile surface, and you awaken to the distant calls of ibises and herons searching for fish along the shallow banks. Your ox shifts in its pen, stretching and shaking off the remnants of yesterday's dust. While your children stir with boundless energy, their voices carrying across the yard as they recount dreams or concoct playful rivalries. You rise, stiff but accustomed to the aches of labor, and take in the familiar smells of river mud, sun-warmed reeds, and smoke from neighboring cooking fires. Each day begins this way, a delicate balance of preparation, expectation, and vigilance. Breakfast is simple but sustaining. Warm flat bread, a smear of honey or date syrup, and a small portion of barley beer. You tear pieces of bread, passing them to your children who nibble while gossiping about yesterday's minor disasters, a mischievous goat, a frog's unexpected leap, or the neighbor's wildly exaggerated story about a crocodile seen prowling along the canal. Humor is ever present, a buffer against the relentless demands of toil. Historians still debate whether communal laughter served a functional role in fostering cooperation among villagers. But in your household, it certainly eases tension and keeps spirits high. Once fed, you lead your ox to the fields, checking each tool carefully. The plow's bronze tip glints faintly, polished from repeated use, and the wooden handle shows the smooth wear of countless hours of labor. The sickle is within reach, ready for occasional trimming of weeds along the edges. Attention to these small details matters. Even a minor flaw, loose strap, a chipped blade can cascade into hours of lost effort. Your hands linger on the worn wood for a moment, imagining the generations that shaped these same implements, and feeling a quiet sense of connection across time. The ox lumbers into the freshly prepared furrows, guided by your steady hand. The rhythmic sound of hooves against soil and bronze scraping through dirt forms a comforting cadence. You hum a familiar tune, and soon your neighbor joins in, contributing a contrasting melody. The songs serve a practical purpose, pacing the work and synchronizing motion. But they also imbue the labor with a faint sense of celebration. Fringe accounts claim that some farmers improvised variations to warn of snakes or crocodiles nearby, blending art, communication, and survival. Children follow, alternating between tasks and play. One carries water to newly planted seedlings, spilling little drops along the furrows and grinning at the miniature waterfalls created. Another retrieves fallen tools, mimicking your motions with exaggerated seriousness. You correct technique with gentle guidance, aware that these small lessons how to plant, tend, and protect crops will be vital in the coming years. Their laughter punctuates the work, a reminder that even the most exhausting days carry moments of joy. Irrigation requires vigilance. You adjust small gates along the channels, redirecting water as needed to prevent both drought and oversaturation. The breeze carries scents of algae, wet mud, and river flora, a sensory reminder of the Nile's ever-present influence. Some older villagers tell stories of placing small offerings at critical gates, hoping to appease water spirits. You may not participate, yet you cannot deny the calming effect of ritual. The sense that human effort and divine favor are intertwined in subtle, unseen ways. As the sun climbs, sweat pours freely, dripping into eyes and mixing with dust. The ox slows, prompting a short rest beneath the shade of a palm. Children sit nearby, munching scraps of bread, exchanging stories about yesterday's skirmishes with goats or the antics of local birds. The monotony of labor is broken by these small dramas, transforming work into a living narrative. Humor, imagination, and effort coexist, sustaining morale even under a relentless sun. You glance toward the horizon, noticing the distant temple pylons rising above the village. The monuments are permanent, enduring for centuries, yet they are sustained by the same labor that fills your furrows with life. Each row of crops, each carefully monitored irrigation channel, contributes quietly to the larger rhythm of civilization. Even small action-standing seedlings, guiding the ox, teaching children support a structure larger than yourself. Scholars debate the extent to which ordinary laborers' contributions were recognized or documented, yet the impact is undeniable. By midday, the sun is harsh and high, and the ox grows weary. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow and drink from your clay jar, enjoying the cooling liquid that tempers the heat of exertion. Children rest briefly, laughing at minor mishaps, misdirected water, a chicken escaping the pen, or an unexpected frog jumping from the canal. Each small incident punctuates the day, preventing fatigue from overwhelming attention or spirit. The rhythm of work resumes. Plow, step, guide. Check irrigation, adjust, guide. Each motion becomes almost meditative, merging physical labor with mental vigilance. You observe seedlings, noting which are thriving and which need attention. Each decision carries weight. Water mismanagement, missed weeds, or delayed harvest could compromise the household's food supply. Survival demands attentiveness, and even as fatigue sets in, your mind catalogs every factor, planning interventions for the next day. Neighbors exchange brief greetings, trade minor goods, or offer advice. Barter remains an essential aspect of life. Figs for barley, small amounts of beer for a handful of onions. Such exchanges strengthen social bonds, create shared knowledge networks, and ensure mutual aid when needed. Stories of trades and generosity pass quickly through the village, reinforcing communal cohesion. Fringe tales claim that some items are considered auspicious in trade, such as certain seeds or clay vessels, but practical experience usually outweighs superstition. As afternoon stretches on, shadows lengthen and the sun begins its slow descent. The ox slows, muscles tight, and children gather under a palm, exhausted but proud of their contributions. You survey the day's work. Neat furrows, healthy seedlings, flowing irrigation channels. The sense of accomplishment mingles with exhaustion. Each action, the plow cutting soil, careful water distribution, minor repairs, teaching children ensures continuity and sustains life. Evening brings cooler air and the comforting sense of cooking fires. Chickens are secured, goats fed, and the ox finally rests fully, panting and satisfied. You pause beneath the shade, gazing at the village and the distant river. The day's labor, though physically taxing, has maintained the delicate balance of survival and continuity. Tomorrow will demand similar energy, ingenuity, and endurance, but tonight you allow a quiet moment of reflection. Stars begin to appear, scattered across the darkening sky like pinpricks of eternity. The river murmurs steadily beside you, reminding you that life in the Nile Valley is a constant interplay between human effort and natural rhythms. Each furrow, each adjustment, each small act of teaching and guidance contributes to survival, prosperity, and the enduring pulse of village life. You feel connected to generations past, present, and those yet to come. A small but vital link in the long chain of human labor along these fertile banks. The morning air carries a gentle chill as you rise, muscles still stiff from the previous day's labors. You hear the soft murmur of the Nile and the rustle of reeds as birds begin their morning calls. The ox stretches in its pen, flinging dew from its coat, and the children are already awake, chattering excitedly about dreams, plans, and yesterday's adventures. Life begins anew each day, though the rhythm is familiar and unforgiving. You step outside, feeling the soft give of mud beneath your sandals, and inhale the scent of the river mingled with smoke from distant cooking fires. Every day is a negotiation between sun, soil, water, and survival. Breakfast is modest but sustaining. Flatbread, a smear of honey or date syrup, and a small portion of weak barley beer. The children eat eagerly, their stories punctuated by laughter, exaggerated movements, and playful disputes. Humor is an essential companion to the hard work that follows, softening the edges of labor and fostering resilience. Fringe tales tell of ancient farmers placing small charms near meals for protection, but in your household, the ritual is practical. Eat well, laugh a little, and gather energy for what comes next. Historians still debate whether these small charms were common or mostly symbolic, but you find the idea comforting. After breakfast, you lead the ox toward the fields, checking every tool carefully. The plow, bronze tip, gleaming faintly, is your constant companion, while the wooden handle, polished from repeated use, feels familiar in your hands. The sickle hangs ready for trimming weeds along the furrows. You inspect each tool meticulously, even minor imperfections, a loose strap, a small chip in the blade can cost hours of labor. You take a moment to run your fingers over the worn wood, appreciating the generations of hands that shaped these implements, a tactile connection across time. The ox lumbers into the furrows, guided by your steady hands and quiet commands. The rhythmic sound of hooves against soil, bronze scraping through earth, and your own soft hum creates a meditative cadence. Soon, your neighbor joins in, their voice adding harmony to the chorus of labor. Farmers' songs serve both practical and psychological purposes, keeping pace and morale aligned. Some fringe accounts suggest variations in these songs signal danger snakes, crocodiles, or approaching storms, blending melody with survival strategies. Children follow close behind, alternating between chores and play. One carries water to seedlings, spilling small amounts in accidental streams along the furrows. while another retrieves lost tools, mimicking your movements with exaggerated seriousness. You correct techniques with patience, knowing these small lessons planting, tending, protecting will be essential for their future independence. Laughter punctuates the rhythm of labor, transforming toil into an ongoing narrative of survival, creativity, and community. Irrigation demands constant attention. You adjust channels, redirecting water to ensure seedlings receive the right amount, neither too much nor too little. The breeze carries scents of mud, algae, and river flora, a reminder of the life-giving waters that sustain both crops and village. Fringe stories tell of offerings placed at critical gates, a blend of practicality and spirituality, hoping to appease water spirits. You may not follow the ritual, but the act offers comfort, a subtle way to exert some control over forces beyond your reach. By late morning, the sun climbs higher, heat intensifying. Sweat pours freely, running into eyes and mixing with dust and mud. The ox slows, prompting a brief pause beneath a palm tree. Children rest briefly, eating scraps of bread and recounting tales of yesterday's exploits. Frogs leaping, goats evading capture, or birds snatching seeds. Each incident becomes part of the collective memory, an informal record of trials and triumphs. Humor and storytelling ease the weight of work, sustaining energy and morale. You glance toward the horizon, noting distant temple pylons rising above the village. These monuments, solid and enduring, contrast sharply with the ephemeral nature of furrows and seedlings. Yet both are products of human effort. Pyramids rely on daily labor for sustenance and tools, just as your crops depend on careful planning and sweat. Small actions, adjusting irrigation, guiding seedlings, teaching children contribute quietly to the larger rhythm of civilization. Scholars debate whether ordinary laborers' contributions were formally recognized, but the impact is evident. Afternoon stretches on. The ox grows weary, muscles taut from repeated exertion. You pause, offering water and gentle encouragements. Children playfully monitor seedlings, occasionally racing to catch the last drops of irrigation spilling into the furrows. Their laughter mingles with your own, a reminder that even small moments of levity are essential to life in the fields. Barter and neighborly interactions continue. Figs exchanged for barley, advice shared about planting techniques, or a borrowed tool returned with a smile. Social cohesion is as vital as water and soil, binding the village into a resilient network. As the sun arcs lower, shadows stretch across the field. Furrows are neat, seedlings upright, and irrigation flows steadily. You survey your work, a blend of satisfaction and fatigue settling into your bones. Each plow line, each adjustment, each lesson imparted to children represents survival and continuity. Evening approaches, carrying cooler air and the comforting aroma of cooking fires. Chickens are secured, goats fed, and the ox rests fully, panting and content. The village quiets, save for occasional animal calls, distant laughter, and the river's gentle murmur. Night arrives, soft and calm. Stars pierce the sky, reflections of eternity mirrored in the dark waters of the Nile. You pause beneath a palm, absorbing the tranquility, reflecting on the rhythm of labor and the interplay of human effort, natural forces, and communal bonds. Each furrow, each water adjustment, each teaching moment contributes to survival, continuity, and the enduring pulse of village life. Tomorrow will demand the same endurance and ingenuity, but tonight you rest, connected to generations past and those yet to come. A small yet vital link in the long chain of life along the Nile. Dawn stretches across the Nile Valley in soft pink-gold ribbons, brushing over reeds, mud brick homes, and glimmering waters. You awaken to the familiar chorus, the distant calls of ibises and herons, a donkey braying somewhere in the village, and the occasional squawk of a rooster staking its claim over the morning. Your ox shifts lazily in its pen, shaking off dew and remnants of yesterday's dust. While your children stir, rubbing sleep from their eyes and whispering conspiratorial plans for small mischief or adventure. The world is quiet, yet full of promise. Every sunrise signaling the continuation of life, labor, and learning. The rhythm of the Nile dictates much of it, but there is also a human element, careful, precise choreography of survival, observation, and ingenuity that you orchestrate daily. Morning rituals unfold in the familiar sequence. You rise, stretching stiff muscles, feeling each joint's subtle ache as a reminder of yesterday's toil. The smell of river mud, sun-baked reeds, and distant cooking fires fills the air, grounding you in the sensory world of the village. Breakfast is simple yet nourishing. Flatbread, a thin smear of honey or date syrup, and a small portion of barley beer. The children eat quickly, crumbs clinging to their hands, voices blending into a lively chorus of chatter. Laughter punctuates their storytelling as they recount yesterday's escapades. Goat that refused to be herded. A frog leaping unexpectedly from the canal, or a bird daring to snatch a seed right from a child's hand. Humor is an essential lubricant for the machinery of survival, lightening the mental load while building resilience. Fringe accounts suggest that some farmers placed small charms near meals for protection or luck. Though in your household the ritual is largely practical, eat well, laugh a little, and ready yourself for the day's labors. Historians still debate the prevalence and intent of such practices, but the comforting rhythm of routine speaks for itself. Once breakfast concludes, you gather your tools and inspect them meticulously. The ox waits patiently, its breath warm and slow, ears twitching at distant sounds. The plow, bronze-tipped and polished from repeated use, glimmers faintly in the morning sun. The wooden handle is worn smooth by countless hands, familiar and reliable beneath your own. Your sickle hangs ready, essential for trimming weeds and shaping furrow edges. Small imperfections, a chipped blade, a loose strap can compound into wasted hours or reduced yield, so you attend to every detail with care. Running your hands over the tools, you sense a connection to generations of farmers, each guiding their ox through the same mud, each shaping the earth and teaching their children. The ox steps into the first furrow, obedient to your quiet commands. The rhythmic sounds of hooves striking soil, bronze scraping through earth, and your gentle hum form a meditative cadence. You notice your neighbor entering the field, voice joining yours in a contrasting melody. Farmer songs serve multiple functions: pacing labor, synchronizing efforts, and boosting morale. Fringe stories suggest variations in these melodies were once used to warn of snakes, crocodiles, or approaching floods, blending practicality with performance. Whether these variations were standardized or improvised remains debated among scholars, but their effect on the flow of labor is undeniable. Children trail behind, alternating between chores and playful antics. One carries a clay jar of water for the seedlings, spilling tiny streams along the furrows and giggling at the miniature rivers created. Another retrieves misplaced tools, mimicking your movements with exaggerated seriousness. You interject with gentle guidance, correcting technique and encouraging diligence. Teaching them is both practical and essential. These lessons ensure future survival and instill responsibility. Laughter continues to punctuate the rhythm of labor, transforming repetitive motion into shared storytelling, memory-making, and small victories that mark the day. Irrigation occupies a central place in the day. You walk along the channels, shifting gates to ensure each seedling receives enough water. Too much water can rot roots. Too little causes withering. The breeze carries the scent of wet mud, algae, and river flora, reminding you of the river's centrality to life. Some villagers incorporate small offerings or symbolic gestures near gates, blending practical water management with superstition or faith. You do not personally follow these rituals, but witnessing them provides reassurance, a subtle sense of control over forces that are otherwise unpredictable. By late morning, the sun is high, heat intensifying. Sweat pours freely, mixing with dust and the rich, dark soil. The ox slows, prompting a pause beneath a generous palm. Children sit nearby, munching scraps of bread and retelling minor adventures. A goat that escaped the pen, a frog that startled a child, or a bird that swooped too close to rip grain. Each story is a minor drama, small in scale but meaningful in shaping observation, timing, and reflexes. Humor is indispensable. It transforms repetitive labor into a living narrative and sustains morale through fatigue. Your gaze drifts to distant temple pylons rising above the village skyline, symbols of permanence and human endeavor. These monuments contrast with the impermanence of furrows and seedlings yet depend on daily labor for construction and maintenance, food for workers, irrigation for fields, and tools crafted by hands like yours. Every row plowed, every water gate adjusted, every seedling tended contributes to a larger rhythm of civilization. Scholars debate how much recognition common laborers received, but the practical and enduring impacts of their work are indisputable. Afternoon stretches on, the ox tires, muscles taut and sweating. You pause again, offering water and patting its flanks with quiet encouragement. Children continue to monitor seedlings, occasionally racing to catch water spilling into furrows, laughing at the minor unpredictabilities of daily labor. Social interactions continue. Neighbors exchange advice, trade goods, figs for barley, small tools for help and share strategies. These networks are vital, reinforcing cohesion and ensuring mutual assistance in times of crisis or bounty. As the sun dips lower, casting elongated shadows across the field, final tasks are attended to. Chickens are secured, goats fed, and the ox rests fully contented. You survey the day's work. Neat furrows, upright seedlings, and flowing irrigation channels. Evening brings cooler air, the aroma of cooking fires, and distant laughter. Reflection accompanies exhaustion, and each act plowing, guiding seedlings, adjusting irrigation. Teaching children feels like a meaningful contribution to continuity and survival. Night arrives slowly. Stars pierce the sky like countless tiny beacons, mirrored faintly in the still waters of the Nile. The river murmurs steadily, cradling the village in its enduring rhythm. You pause, absorbing tranquility and reflecting on the interplay of human effort, natural forces, and social bonds. Tomorrow will demand similar endurance, creativity, and care, but tonight you rest. Connected to the generations before and those yet to come. Each furrow, each adjustment, each lesson ensures continuity, sustaining both your household and the timeless pulse of life along the Nile. The village grows quiet as night deepens, and you lie on your simple mat, muscles still tingling from the day's labor. Outside, the Nile murmurs steadily, a gentle, timeless rhythm that mirrors the slow, calming beat of your own heart. Crickets chirp, frogs croak softly, and a distant owl calls once before settling into silence. The air has cooled, carrying with it the earthy scent of mud, river plants, and faint smoke from nearby fires. Every breath feels restorative, every inhalation a reminder that life continues. And your efforts have played a part in that continuity. You let your mind drift, recalling the day's small triumphs, furrows plowed with care, seedlings receiving just the right amount of water, children learning through play and observation. Each tiny accomplishment feels magnified in this quiet moment, a testament to patience, persistence, and the rhythm of survival. Even the minor mishaps, the spilled water, the stubborn goat, the frog that startled a child, fold into the story of the day, a gentle reminder that life's unpredictability is part of its beauty. Your thoughts wander to the broader tapestry of time. Countless farmers before you, each sunrise and sunset marked by toil and laughter, sweat and song. You are part of a chain stretching across generations, a link connecting the past with the present and guiding the future. The monumental pyramids and temples rising along the Nile are not only stone and mortar, but also echoes of the lives of ordinary people who nourished, built, and maintain civilization in subtle, essential ways. Slowly, you feel tension leave your body. Shoulders release, muscles relax, and eyelids grow heavy. The laughter of children, the soft murmur of the river, the distant caw of a bird, these sounds dissolve into a soothing background hum. Your mind softens, embracing the calm, the quiet, and the continuity that life along the Nile provides. Now, as sleep draws near, you carry with you a sense of accomplishment, connection, and gentle wonder at the cycles of nature and human endeavor. Your day is complete, your role fulfilled, and the rhythm of the Nile continues, eternal and steady. Let this quiet, slow cadence of life lull you toward rest.